During this session, we'll take a look at the AP Invoice Integrator for Oracle ERP Cloud. As you can see, a standard Excel spreadsheet in terms of the user interface, built on the supported Oracle SOAP and REST services. And the functionality that Excel brings is obviously available to you as you go through creating invoices in the cloud. The first step is to ensure you have the More4apps tab enabled, set in Excel using the options menu. And once you have that enabled, you then have access to the More4apps ribbon and indeed the functionality that sits behind it. The first step is to log into the integrator. Bearing in mind, as we go through this process, the integrator fully respects the current setup that you have within your Oracle instance in terms of access to instances, the security around log-on credentials, etc. So if you indeed have access to multiple instances, you can select the instance from here, and indeed you can add other instances that you may have access to. We have single sign-on capability as well as the standard login capability. Once you've logged on successfully, the next step in the exercise is to create a new sheet. So we'll create a new sheet by selecting the correct module, finance in this case, and accounts payable, and that will then create a sheet based on the template, giving you basically all the columns that correlate back to the Oracle fields available for you to create your invoices. So as you can see, header information, accounting, tax, payments, DFFs, attachments, holds, lines, line tax, etc. So the next step is to customize the sheet to meet your production requirements. In other words, only having those columns that are appropriate for your production. And we just use the standard Excel functionality to either hide the columns, delete the columns, or indeed, if we wanted to move the columns, then we could move the columns and insert them in a position that is appropriate for your particular needs. And as we can see here with my demo sheet, I've reduced the number of columns to meet my needs in terms of production. A couple of points to note with regard to the spreadsheet. The greyed out areas are for system messaging and status recording. So as we go through the production process, the statuses and or error messages will be displayed in the grey areas. The white areas in terms of the cells is for obviously direct data input. The inverted triangles, these are the fields that we use to download information back into the spreadsheet from Oracle. So we can download based on purchase order, supplier number, etc. So there are a number of fields available for us to do this. There is also a download form which we'll look at later. Row 10 is an important row. Row 10 is the default row. So any value that we might have in row 10 will be reflected against the invoices that we're creating in the spreadsheet. So in this case here, create. Equally, it could be a business unit. If you're dealing with the one supplier, then you might want to default the supplier name or supplier number. The row 9 is the column headings, and as mentioned, these correlate back to the fields in Oracle, so it's important they remain as they are in the spreadsheet. If you wish to change the name for whatever reason, because you're more familiar with a different terminology, then feel free to use column 7 upwards. In terms of getting the data into the spreadsheet, obviously one has the ability to type directly into the cell, but the more appropriate method potentially is to use the data forms. These data forms align with each section within the spreadsheet. So in this case we are in the header section, so it will present to us the form for the header section. because we defaulted the word create, then that has automatically picked that up, and as you can see it here. We then have the ability to do the wildcard searching. So we can search based on some criteria, and once it's found it, it will then give us a list of values. We can select a particular purchase order in this case, and once we've tabbed off it, it will then populate the defaulted information, if you like, with regard to that particular purchase order. And then from there, if we're basing our invoice on a purchase order, we then can type in the detail in terms of the other information required. We do have lists of values associated with some of the fields. In this case, we have a direct match for USD, and then of course we can put the dollar amount, and so on and so forth. So we go through, it might be a date that we're entering, so we use the date picker, and then the other sections within the header we can enter. So we go ahead and enter that, and that will then populate the spreadsheet. As we work through that process, the integrator will then do a level of validation against the data. So if we look at some invoices that I have created earlier, so we can see we've got the detail at the header level. In this case, we have on the first one 2 attachments. It's important to note that we can add attachments subsequent to the creation of the invoice, the initial creation of the invoice, that is. And we've also got a hold on the first one. And then of course we've gone across to our line detail, be it general ledger, distributions, etc. And on this particular one, we have a purchase order associated with that invoice. So once we have entered the information, when we can then validate all or selected. So we might want to have some sort of demarcation around roles and responsibilities. So it might be someone has the ability to validate the data to ensure the data is correct, and a separate person doing the upload and creation in Oracle. So we'll just go ahead and validate all. The upload process, which we'll do in a second, will in fact do that validation first. So you can go straight to upload, where it will validate and then attempt to upload and create the invoices in Oracle. So as you can see, we've now completed that validation process. So the statuses have been returned to the spreadsheet, as mentioned earlier. We've got the attachments validated, the hold, etc. So the next step in the exercise is to go through and upload either the selected or upload all in the spreadsheet. So we'll upload all in this particular case. So as we can see, that process is now complete, and we have got our statuses of accepted returned for all the invoices that we've created on this particular sheet. So now let's have a look at an invoice in Oracle. So we'll select our first invoice and search for that in Oracle. And here it is. As you can see, the holds have been applied, the 2 attachments, and the rest of the detail in terms of the invoice itself. Now let's take a look at the download capability of the integrator. So we'll once again use our first invoice. We'll paste that value into the appropriate column, and then we will download. As mentioned, we have the ability to download via the sheet or via a form, so we'll just do it via the sheet in the first instance, and that'll bring the data back associated with that invoice. As you can see, any fields or values that are defaulted against the supplier, or indeed the process of creating the invoice, those values will be brought back down into the spreadsheet automatically. And in terms of the form, you'll see the criteria within the form of which you can download information back into the sheet, or invoices back into the sheet based on this criteria. And finally, we'll finish with the help functionality. What's particularly useful for us as an organisation in terms of support is the about information. So if there was an issue and you're creating a support ticket, then this information is particularly valuable to us to include within the query. And within that help icon, we've got the user instructions, release notes, etc. So that is the AP Invoice Integrator.